All right, everybody. So welcome to our seminar, Excel 201. As Stefan introduced me, I am Michael McEvenue, and let's get this going. So today, we're going to cover a few things. A little about me, what skills we're going to do, what to do when you have data, what are the next steps, and steps to success. And then we're going to go into the Excel demo, which is where all the meat of this presentation is. So just a little background about me. I'm a data visualization analyst. I do graphic design work, and I'm an energy analyst. So I specialize in Excel and do energy analytics, custom reporting, and graphic design. OK, so we're going to be talking about some keyboard shortcuts, because you want to be fast and efficient when you're working. Tables. If you haven't used them, you will be using them from now on, because they are amazing. Slicers, the next level of tables to be able to organize and sort your data. Data cleaning, basic ETL, extract, transform, and load. It's an industry term, but don't worry about it. It's part of what you're going to be doing whenever you work with data. Paste special, it's a function also, like a command. Sumifs, remind me if I don't cover this. Index match, it's like VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, but it's a bit more robust in my opinion. Conditional formatting, where you're coloring and highlighting and being able to indicate interesting parts of your data without having to do that manually. This is intelligent formatting. Pivot tables. Everyone should be all excited about pivot tables. And yeah, all right, so you have data. Now what? So anytime you come across something in life, like the unknown, it can become overwhelming. And that's the story with data. When you don't know what it is, or you just have a huge file full of unknown numbers and text, it can be scary. So start with what you know and build on it. These are the questions. I mean, you don't have to go into this every time, but these are things to think about when you have a new data set. And when I'm talking about a new data set, you get an assignment, you get a project, you go work for a company, and they're like, hey, we have this from our client. They want to know what's going on. Hopefully you guys are in the energy field, but wherever you end up, these are the questions asked. Who is it for? Who will use it? What is the data? What will it be used for? Where did it come from? Where is it going? For example, like if it's coming from a piece of equipment or it's coming from a utility bill, knowing where those things are can let you go back and fix issues if the original data isn't good, or to be able to get additional data if you need it. And then where is it going? Is this going to be in a report? Is this going to be just stored somewhere for someone to look at? Is this going to become a dashboard? Like how is this data going to be used? And that leads us to the next part. Why are we using this data? Like, is this actually relevant data? Do we need to use this? Do we have other options? Do we need to pull in new things? And what questions are we answering? Whenever you build a report, whenever you start getting into Excel, you have to be like, what is this for? What is the ultimate point of what I'm doing? And so in today's example, we're going to be looking at utility data from fire stations. And the question is, what is going on at these fire stations? What is their energy use? How much is it costing them? What's happening this year versus that year? So knowing what it is you're looking for, you can determine what tools you're going to use and how you're going to present it. Whether that'll be PowerPoint, whether that'll be a Word document, or a publisher, ultimately become a PDF or to be presented in a presentation perhaps. So knowing these questions is just things to think about when you look at the data. That's a great starting point. Because like I said, when you first look at it, it can be overwhelming. So knowing what you have and what you need to do with it will determine how you proceed. So there you go. My first experience when I came across this was, poop my pants, because I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? This is just a whole lot of numbers and text, and I've only worked with, let's say, 20 rows of data before. How am I going to handle this, right? And so, yeah, first thing is, what is this? What can we do? So step one, stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. You got this. This is manageable, all right? Because, yes, it can be overwhelming, but again, you start with what you know. So what is data? Essentially, when we're looking at this, you have numbers, you have text, and you have dates. So this first part, as you can see, this is text. If you look at an account number, you could potentially call it a number, but because we're not doing math with it, I prefer to call it text. If you have zeros in front, or you have a mix of letters and numbers, it's just better to have that as text. the billing period, the start date, end date, these are all dates. And then we got some more numbers, some text, and some more numbers, right? So there you go, very, very simple. You've taken what all of a sudden was a big pile of characters and turned it into actually useful information. You're like, okay, and I've got some basics of what this is. So the next part is being prepared. We have Mr. Table over here, which we're going to be working with shortly. And then this is a map, and this is a sample. So first, you got to format your data as a table. And this, of course, is related to Excel. You don't have to, but this is what I recommend. Format your data as a table. Review the data content of each column. We did that very briefly. This is text. This is numbers. What else is in here? Build a map of what you have and what it's for. Again, this is something optional, but if you're in a situation where you've got a massive table that doesn't have like 10 columns, but maybe has 30 or 40, taking that time to go through step by step to see what's actually going on in there and making your notes will make it, again, you're breaking it down and you're understanding what's going on with the data, and you can start to decide what's useful, what's not useful, and how all this stuff is going to play together. So the next thing is cleanup. You will spend probably 80% of your time doing cleanup when it comes to data. There's a lot of mistakes, duplicate data, redundant data, typos, you can name it. There's a lot of different situations where you've got, let's say, mixed data in one column. One column should always have one type of data. If you have a column for your dates, you only put dates in there. You don't put how much money was spent. You don't put like notes about other parts of the information. It's a common practice in Excel to do that because there's no limitations or controls to block you from making those kind of errors. But if you are in a situation where you're working with Tableau, for example, or other proper professional, not to say Excel is not professional, but like database structured software, you can't do that. You can only have one type of format, and there's a reason for that, because if you don't, you can imagine what kind of confusion can happen if you have mixed data. A perfect example is if you have, you're counting bills. In your bills, you got your 20s and your 50s, and you're going through, and then all of a sudden you got Monopoly money. So you've been doing all this count in your head, and then you come across Monopoly money, and you're like, wait a minute, now I got to take out this. Now I have to go back through all this data and go, wait, which is this is real money, and which of this is Monopoly money? And basically, that's noise in your data, and you don't want that. So you have to absolutely clean it so that you can process it. And when you're doing equations like a simple sum, how much does this add up to, or a min or a max? You can trust what's going on in there, and you don't have bad data. Then the next part is shaping it so that it's usable for what you need. And then you're going to format it, which can be from how it looks to how it presents. For example, this section over here with the dates, some people might want to say year, month, day. Some might want to say month, day, year. There's a bunch of different ways you can present the same piece of information. And then you're going to present it. And again, that can come in many different formats. So that's just a high level of what goes into building a clean Excel database, I guess, or data set. So this is what we started with. This was provided by Dragos. This is fire hall data. And going back through our original process, okay, let's look at this. This first column, I'm seeing a bunch of, I got some numbers and letters, and I'm seeing that it's changing as I scroll down. So I'm assuming that these are going to be grouped together. And I'm seeing some other things here. I'm seeing E's and N's. This might be related to something. And I have electricity and some numbers. And I have some dates, okay. And then the number of days, which it doesn't look like there's any formulas. And then, so we got some native use, which I'm going to assume is something else. It looks like it's kilowatts in this instance, but maybe there's other things going on. So just high level, I can see what's happening here. One of the things that you're going to do is you don't destroy data unless you need to, but for the most part, like when you start with this, deleting and hiding rows and stuff typically is what happens when you want to present the data. I've seen it where the very first thing is you want to present something. You format everything that's in this table to be presentable. And that's not a good practice, because what if you hid something that you needed and then you went back and didn't realize that happened? So for example, I'm looking at all this electricity stuff and I'm like, okay, I'm going to add this all up. If I had some hidden rows in between here, I might not have those included, and because I forgot they were hidden, because I was presenting it, I forgot those numbers were there and I didn't include it, and then all of a sudden my totals are off. And then when your boss comes back and goes like, what's going on, you have to go back and try to figure out what happened. So we keep the original data in one place, and then we make a duplicate of it so that we can always go back to where we started. So this is an example of a table that's been formatted, and it's got some of the features that I was talking about, and we'll get into that. So let's actually just start building this out. So the very first thing, like I said, you want to name your file when you're starting off. Keeping organized is part of keeping everything in order. It's easy to end up with many versions of things. So I recommend using a naming format. You can vary it, but the logic is you do date, and then you do what the project is, a subtitle of the project, and then what version. So you can see in the name of my file, I've got the date, and then I have what the project is, and then the subtitle, and then this is additional information. But the point is that if I were to do another presentation on a different date, I have the date in there and I can sort it. It makes it nice and easy. And then I could sort by date, and then I could sort by this type. And if I had multiple presentations to you guys, I could have it all grouped in the file structure. It makes it nice and easy. So this is the raw data. You can do a quick way to copy tabs. If you hold down the control button and you click and drag over, it's going to make a new tab. And it's going to put a number in there because there's already an existing tab in there with that name. So we can rename that. I usually call the data to begin with, just because then I go, okay, well, this is the original spot where this all started, and we can go from there. So in this instance, I'm just going to, call it data 2, but just work with me. So we have a duplicate. This is the original. I can actually now hide this so that it's there, but it's not something I can access for now. It's out of my way. So the next part is turning this into a table. So the shortcut is Control T. So if you hit Control T, it's going to pop up and open this dialog box that says Create a Table, and it's saying what are the dimensions of your table. Now you can just say OK, but we can see here at the top we've got our title in there, and that's no good. We know that these are actually the headers. So what you want to do is actually select the headers. You can actually, talking about keyboard shortcuts, if you click on the first one, press Control-Shift, and then hit the right arrow, it'll go over to the rightmost value, and then stop, which is nice. And then if you do Control-Shift down, it'll go down to the bottom. Now, we happen to have 2 extra rows in there that aren't part of what we want to include. So if you hold Shift and you, Control-Shift again, and you tap up, up. Control? No. Yeah, no. 1 second. Yeah. Is it Shift up?
Yeah, no control.
Yeah, mine's not being good. So get to your top of your data set and select the whole thing. You can see we have a lot in here, so I'm just going to go to the bottom. My keyboard shortcuts are not working. OK, so make sure you got everything selected. And then you're going to say, yes, my table has headers. If it doesn't have headers, what it'll do is it'll put a whole row and just call it column 1, column 2, column 3. And you'll have to rename it. In this case, we actually have our headers, so we'll go OK. One of the other things you can do that's very useful, you typically tend to work with multiple tabs. So what you can do is you can make a new window. And it's the exact same file, but you're duplicating the window. So the keyboard shortcut for that, we hit Alt, and then we'll see W for View. So you tap W, and then you'll hit N for New. And then it pops open another window. And then if you want to pop this window over to the right or left, you can actually hit the window key, and the right arrow or left arrow to move it around so it's split. So immediately you can be doing a cross comparison between multiple tabs, and you don't have to be clicking back and forth. You can edit things and it updates immediately on both. I saw a question. Is that yes? Go back a couple steps? What do you need? Huh? To split it? Oh, okay. It's okay. We'll start here. So if you go to View, the View tab up here, and then you press New Window, it'll pop it up in a new window. The other way, which is for any shortcut that you do, if you hit the Alt key, just tap the Alt key, and you'll see letters pop up. Now, if you want to navigate to any one of those tabs, you just hit the letter that it corresponds with. We want to go to the View tab, so we hit W. And then we hit the N, because we want to do New Window. And then we use the Window key with left and right to move it around. If you press left and right, it moves it left and right. And if you want to maximize it, you can press up. And if you want to minimize it, you can press down. OK? OK, so we now have two windows to see what's going on. I'm doing this because I have some notes on kind of the steps of what's happening here. So we already duplicated our data. I had some other recommendations on storing your folders, like having an archive folder for older versions so that you have a clean view of your working folder. Having a reference folder, so if your boss gives you or professor gives you multiple files and you have to actually end up putting them together into one file, you can keep all those original ones in one place in that folder and then just have your main folder in the main window, sorry, main file in the main window, and it just keeps it clean. OK, so we converted a table. Just some quick notes. There's a lot of different things you can do with tables. Automatic formatting of rows and columns. So one of the things you guys will notice is this is doing alternating colors, right? You didn't have to manually color it. It does it automatically. And every time you add new data, it's going to do alternating colors. If you want to change this, just to vary between your tables, you have the table styles over here. In your table styles, you have a bunch of different presets, and just mousing over them, you're going to see the formatting change. And depending on what you want, you can pick whatever style you like. For the main tables, I typically will use something like gray so that I know that this is the original. Color coding your tables helps you identify quickly what you're looking at. So in the terms of utility data, I've come up with a color scheme that electricity is green, natural gas is orange, and water is blue. So immediately when you see those colors, you know what you're looking at without even having to read anything, and it speeds things up. You can come up with your own color scheme. The whole point is to be consistent. So now we've just colored our table. You can always go back and change it, and you can even do custom styles. This is quick styles, but if you want to get fancy, you can go in the new tables, and you can actually set all the different parameters if you want to get into that. But we're not going to get into that today because that's more fancy business that's not necessary. One of the things, too, is automatic formulas. So if I add a formula over here, so tables are intelligent. They understand when you are trying to add new data, either new columns or new rows. So if we were to make a new column, I'm just going to start typing over here, and it's going to automatically bring in a new column. It resizes it to fit the dimensions. It resizes it to add your new column name just based on the name. If I drag over, it's going to add a whole bunch and resize my table accordingly. One of the other things I did, and if you have questions when you're seeing me do it, because I will move quickly, if you wanted to resize your content, if you highlight all the top here, and you want them all to be the same size, if you just click and drag and let go, now they're all the same size. So that makes a clean way if you want to standardize it. One of the other things you can do is, this isn't very useful to me. If I'm presenting it, maybe it could be good. But what I usually want to do is I want it to fit to the size of what's in it. Based on the size, if it's wider or if it's shorter, I want it to fit. So you put your mouse in the same place until you get this line with the two arrows, and you double click. And now it sizes every single column according to the max width of the contents inside it.
Do you have the entire table selected there, like all the way down?
No, you don't have to. I'm selecting the columns. I'm highlighting the columns themselves.
Oh, I see.
And you can do that on just one. Like I can just resize one, which I'm sure you're familiar with, or I can do this. So I'm doing this on the columns, not the table itself. So, okay. So we're talking about formulas being applied all the way down. If I want to do some basic math, this is for demonstration purposes, not because it's actually useful per se. Hold on. Okay, I figured out what was going on. If you have the button scroll lock pressed, it doesn't let your arrow keys work the way they're supposed to, so keep that in mind. One of the other recommendations I have for you, when you're working with Excel, numbers are a big part. So get familiar with the number pad on the right. It will make it so much faster to do entry. Doing the horizontal number pad, you can't memorize it, whereas if you use the number pad, you can actually memorize it. You get fast. You can start typing in. So typically when you're writing a formula, you'll use the equal sign, but you can actually use the plus sign, which is readily available on your number pad. So I can do the plus sign, type in my numbers, and then when I'm done, I just hit enter, which is also in the number pad. Now, what you can see happened here, it's just applied all the numbers all the way down. Now, in and of itself, this is not very useful because this, as you can see, this is basically what I call like hard-coded numbers in the formula. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to show those numbers all the way down. And if that was the case, this number 9148, we can hit our equal sign, and we can do 9148, and it should, oh, it's converted it. Put an equal sign. So now what it's done is it's set everything in here to equal 9148. If I want this to say Bob all the way down, you put the text in quotes, and you press enter. Now it's autofilling Bob all the way down. Again, this might not be useful in this current form, but if you do find yourself needing to fill something down quickly, that's one way to do it. You can also, so one of the other things in tables is it understands the limits, the bottom and the top and the max. So if you put your mouse over to this point and you click, you'll see the arrow. It lets you, if you click once, it'll select just the content. If you click twice, it'll select everything. So if you do this, and I scroll down, you'll see that it's actually gone all the way to the bottom, but it stops. It doesn't go on forever. Whereas if you select a column, typically, it's going to select everything and infinity. And so your stuff will get very messy very quickly if you're trying to do colors, and now you've just applied it everywhere, and that doesn't look very good. And you end up going back trying to clean it up. So we just hit the arrow here, and now everything in here has been colored, but it's just the table. And in the same way, I can hit delete, and now all this stuff is gone, and no sweat. So yeah, so if we're doing a basic inline formula, you can hit equals or plus, and I'm just going to add up these two things. Now, did you notice something that happened there? What is the content that's inside that? What does it say? It says paid amount plus cost. Now, that is not saying R6 and K6. It's saying paid amount and cost. And what are those? Those are the headers of the columns. And so immediately, when it comes to your formulas, you can actually read them in English. And so it makes it so much easier to understand more complex formulas because you can actually read what it's saying. If I have just a regular cell reference, like if I were to put some number here and some number here, and I did the same thing, this is what the formula is. And I can use the colors, and it helps me, and it's a guide, but I have no additional information about those numbers. Whereas inside a table, I have information of what it is. And maybe it makes me realize that I included something wrong. So I'm saying I have the paid amount, distribution, demand, and cost, and then I can go, wait a minute. I'm not supposed to include demand in here. And so you can go back and clean that up. Sorry, does anyone have any questions?
So can you just show how you got that again?
Which?
How you got to say the
Oh, so you're writing a formula. So you hit plus or you hit the equal sign.
Okay.
And then I just use the arrow keys actually, and I navigate to where I want. Hit the plus sign again.
Okay. Oh, but it's not doing cells in here.
No, it's doing the column names, and that's the power of tables.
Oh, because it does it.
So when you do this and you press enter, that's going to autofill all the way down, and you can see the huge variety of numbers. And you don't have to drag because tables are smart and they're your best friends. Be good to your tables. Okay, so we just added a formula. I gotta keep focused on what we're doing here. So one of the other things you can do too is total row. So we're gonna clean this up to make it just. I'm gonna filter. You can watch how we're doing this. I'm gonna filter by one item, and again by another item. I'm gonna go into this more in detail, but so I've reduced the amount of information here so you guys can see it. One of the shortcuts too that you can do if you want to have more screen real estate, if you double click any of these tabs, it's going to hide what's in here, so I have more space. Okay, so what is a typical function that you do in order to add these things up, right? You want to go, well, you know, how much, what are my totals for this? The typical way that I've seen is you can hit equal, and then you can type out sum, and then put your bracket, blah, blah, blah. And then you highlight this, you highlight your thing, and away you go. Now, if I were to unfilter things or I was to move, that formula is kind of locked to a certain degree. And it's not very flexible. And I can override it by accident too. Excel, the developers of Excel know that people do basic math with their information all the time. So one of the things you can do is up here, you'll see Table Tools Design. Now, as a note, if I click over here, where did your Table Tools go? It's gone. If I click inside, it pops up. It might not necessarily be selected, but you'll see it up here. The Microsoft Office suite is context sensitive. So if you're wondering where your table tools are, it's probably because you haven't actually selected inside the table. So you have to click somewhere in the table so you can see it. Now, if we click on this guy called Total Row, and apparently you can hit Control-Shift-T, which is even faster, you'll see it adds another row. Total. You can do the same thing as I was saying with the selection. You can put the arrow here. This will select just that bottom row. If I select out here on the column, it actually selects everything beyond that, just as an FYI. So you can see this is the total row. Now it happened to figure out that I wanted to have a sum in here, so that's nice and convenient, but let's put in a new one. So you click the arrow, and then you can hit sum. And it adds it up just like that. So one of the other things too is if I update this. So let's copy and paste this number just as a quick way. So this is paste special. If you hit Control-Alt-V, this lets you have so much more control over your pasting abilities, and this is very powerful. So in this instance, that was a formula. I don't want the formula, I just want the value. So I can either put my mouse over here and click value, or if you look very closely, do you see that underline? Each one of these words will have an underline under a letter. So when I first did it, it said all, but what's the letter underneath here? V. So if I tap V, it goes to V. And then I can just hit enter. I don't have to hit OK. And so now it just pasted the value from down here. Okay? So this is me doing like a magic trick, so keep your eye on the ball. If I go up here, with this somewhere in the table selected, I go sort and filter, and I go clear. This is going to reset the table to have no filters and back to how we had it originally. Now, do you remember this number? If I scroll back down to the very bottom, it's been updated. It's something completely different. And every time I filter this, it's going to update automatically. And it shows only the values that are in that column and based on what is currently showing. If you filter the data, it will update the numbers accordingly. So moving values around, not something I necessarily recommend, but let's say, for example, I want to move this over here. You can select the cell, put your mouse so that you've got the forward direction arrow, and I can just drag it over. Do you notice how the color didn't come with it? There was no issue. The number just moved. You can do the same thing with whole rows and columns. You can move things around, and it'll let you know that you're doing something wonky, but you're able to move things around, and it doesn't have a problem. Yes?
This is something small, but might be a little frustrating to fix.
Sure.
my headers are on the row above
Yes.
the titles.
Yes.
And I just like, it's probably really simple, but.
Okay, so yeah, that is actually not too bad. So let's go back to the question was, these headers up here were,
One row above.
we're showing, you probably have it saying column 1, column 2.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, so what happened was when you made your table, you didn't say my table has headers. So if I were to grab this piece of information over here, we're just going to paste it. Okay, it kept the formatting. Let's say I didn't want to keep the formatting. I can do undo. I do Control-Alt-V, that paste special friend again. Do values because I just want the numbers. I don't want the formulas. Just give me the numbers. Don't give me any formatting. There you go. Okay, it's selected. If I press Control-T on this, it's saying my table has headers. If I turn this off, watch what happens. Column 1, column 2, column 3, right? And I'm like, oh no, my data is ruined. So what you can do is you can go back to your table tools. And in here, you could convert it back to a range if you want. And what that does is it basically leaves the data as it is, but removes the table properties. So it says, do you want to convert? You can do that. So it looks like a table, but it doesn't function like one. There's no header up here that says table. So that's one way to do it, but that's not the way I'd recommend. What you can do is you go design, and then you can go resize table. Now, in the instance you have a huge data set, probably not the way to do it, but this is another way to just be aware of how your table is working. So you can actually do this. Resize it, ignore that, go OK. Headers remain in the same row. OK. So it's saying that you have 2 sets of headers, and it doesn't want to do that. OK. Option number 2. Highlight, and I think you should be able to go copy and paste. OK. And then what we do is we can right-click, and you can go delete rows.
Okay, so you could just kind of.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. Did you notice how I deleted rows? It didn't touch anything over here? One of the things with the tables that's really, really cool, you can actually grab the whole table, move around, and everything stays together. And I'm going to show you how that has huge benefits later. But the other thing, too, is you can just delete it, and everything's gone. There's nothing to clean up. It's as magical as it started. So you're able to do that. And then, so what I was saying, though, is when you are deleting and moving things in tables, if you want to insert a column, you can do it 2 ways. But you have to be aware of the difference. If you do insert and then say to the left, what this has done has shifted everything over. That doesn't look like anything special because this is a clean area and there's nothing being affected. But what you've done actually is you've shifted these cells over without even being able to see it. So if I had information here, high quality information, and I did insert, here actually, I'm going to show you where this becomes a problem. So we have this nice set of data. We can even put a little title on here, and I don't know if it'll complain because I don't do this, but let's say that's the typical way you've filtered things inline. If I were to insert a column, it's letting you know that that it's affecting a filtered range. So with a filter on it, you can't do it. So let's turn that off and try again. Now, do you see what just happened? Our beautiful straight line of data just got, and if that was important, all of a sudden your formulas that might have been adding those numbers up just got broken. So we don't do that. Just as a safe protocol, again, if you don't have data on a side that'll be affected when you move it, then it's not a problem. But I just get into the habit of going insert, and I just insert it, and it respects it. If you have multiple tables stacked, it's going to be a problem. But typically, I'll keep 1 table per page. And if not, I'll respect the boundaries of where those tables are and insert rows and columns like that. So doing this, if I wanted to insert some rows, I can highlight a few and go insert above. And what that's going to do is going to insert 3 new rows right where I had it standing. This information still got respected, but what was underneath here would have got bumped down. So if I were to take my useful data, another nice shortcut, if you right-click with that selected and drag, you've got a whole host of options. This is really, really, really handy. You can paste values without having to do any keyboard shortcuts, formats, links, a bunch of different things. And I can just say copy here with 1 mouse click versus a whole series of highlight, right-click, copy, right-click, paste. I can do it in one shot. So you highlight, drag with a right click, not left, right click, copy here. So if I did that insert again, it's popped it down. Again, not necessarily a huge issue, but if you had a whole series of information around it, that could cause problems. Anyway, so you can insert rows in line like this, or you can. I don't know if you can see the difference. Here, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So if you right-click, you can hide columns. I don't know how many of you guys knew that, but this is just so you can see. If I'm highlighting this is just content inside the table, right? I'm going to insert another column so you can see. This is just highlighting stuff inside the table. This is highlighting the entire rows. Both will do the same thing. But again, if you have additional information over here, just be careful with that. So I can right-click and go Insert Above, and it pops it down. I can right-click and highlight the entire rows, and it does the same thing. So just be aware of where your data is. So formula show column names. Yes, we've seen that. Formulas are not affected. So we saw, yeah, so that's another thing too, is that these formulas, if you do an insert, your formulas will stay, your formulas still work. They copy down. So it maintains that all the way through. Moving tables, I'm going to show you how that can be used when we do formulas. Okay. Anyway, so you get the idea that tables are very useful. So the next part, we've taken our data, we've converted it into a table, Control-T, and now we want to actually start looking at our data itself. So one of the ways you can do that is using these little guys above. So this lets you filter. It shows you what's in here, the different options. If there are duplicate options, which we can see that there are many, many different versions of these things, this will only show you the unique values. So immediately you're able to filter through the content and see what you have and what unique values there are. If I want to filter this, I can have it select all. I can manually pick one at a time and just leave the ones I want. I can just deselect and pick. Or I could even do formulas and say that if it has certain numbers or if it has certain letters. Or my favorite is I can type. So I go into the search button, I can do 315. And now it filters just 315, 314. And so in this example, there's not a whole lot, but let's look at the account code. Now I've got a whole bunch of different variations. And if I wanted to grab, let's say, this one, but didn't want to search through a couple hundred, you can just type it in and it filters it. One of the other things you can do with filtering is coloring. So you can filter by color. So I'm looking through here, and does anybody spot something wrong with the data in here?
Yeah.
What's wrong?
Different wording for what we're saying.
So you have different entries. You have different entries. OK. So maybe I'm going to flag this one. So you can either do that, or you can actually right-click and do formatting too. I forget that sometimes. So these are the ones that I think are problematic. Okay. Now, if I want to filter by just those, I can go filter by color. Boom. And so going on that also, this is called conditional formatting. If we highlight all these things, and we go up to the conditional formatting tool, you can do highlight cells according to rules. Now, you can do this with numbers. You can do this with text. Just to be simple, I can say equal to, and then it has to match that exactly. But in this case where we can see we have different variations going on, I want it to highlight any of the ones that, let's just say, cover ELEC, so that it marks it regardless. So I'm going to do text that contains. So if I do ELEC, I'm going to make it green. So these are the default ones that are inside here. But we can also do custom. Now, if you remember what I said with my default coloring, when I see electricity, I want it to be green. So I'm just going to pick this color. It's just a fill. You can do borders. You can do fonts. You can do crazy stuff. I try to keep it simple because you can quickly get crazy with it. So I just want it to be green. So now, if I scroll through, Notice that all the stuff that's in green is the electricity stuff. And even with the different variations, because I just said ELEC. Now, if I grabbed one of these guys, if you hit F2, it lets you edit the text. So I can either start typing when I have something selected, or I can hit F2, and that lets you edit. So if in here I put another E, now it doesn't work. I just broke it. So you can dynamically highlight it. Rather than manually looking for things, you can put it so it's dynamic to be able to catch stuff. So another example of that is you can do like a heat map. So these numbers, if we're looking at them, you can see 2012, 01, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seems to be climbing, right? We're increasing year, month. So I can go in here, and I can have it color it. So it quickly is grouping them together in intervals, and I have a feeling if I look at it, these are the years. So the first three, these are 2015, 2014, 2013. So immediately you're able to visually separate the different types of information you have in there. And in the case with days, you're going to get more of a graduated level of numbers. See how this one sticks out? It's a bigger number, right? So the more numbers you have, the more the colors are going to gradiate over time. But anyway, so conditional formatting. So conditional formatting, if you want to highlight specific values, you can even do it. So find me formulas, find me blanks. So for an example, if I had in here, let's say I had one blank. You can have it highlight, and you highlight the data you want to conditionally format. You click on conditional formatting. You go highlight cell rules. These are the default ones, but as you can see, none of these say blank. So I could go more rules. Now in here, in this dropdown, we have a few options: cell value, specific text, dates occurring, blanks, errors, no errors. So blanks. And I want this to stand out, so I'm going to pick the format, go OK, and then go OK. And now there's a blank. If I add any blanks, I'm just deleting stuff right now. It immediately highlights. Now let's say you have conditional formatting you want to get rid of. You go here, and you do clear rules. Now you can do it to the entire sheet if you just want to reset everything. But in this case, I just want to do selected cells. And it just removes it from that column.
That was the same for when you color-coded all like ELs?
Yes. So the difference was I used so the question was when I colored these things, this text, how did I do that? So in this instance, I could say equal to, but I said text that contains. And the reason is if there was some variations of text in here, this will cover it. Now what we're going to do actually is we're going to start cleaning this data up. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to clear these rules for now so that they're no longer there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you just do undo?
Sure.
So you see how only hydro in your commodity code, only hydro is highlighted yellow.
Yes.
So we removed the the coloring.
Yeah.
There were two more.
Yes. So what happened was in this instance, I had some manual highlighting I did. Okay. The only reason that this is still yellow and hasn't gone green is because it doesn't match the conditional formatting. It doesn't say electricity. As soon as I type in ELC, it's there, right? But then if I were to highlight these and go clear rules unselected, the yellow's still there.
Right.
So what's happened is
Manual highlight.
yes. So it'll override manual highlights, which is also really useful. It can be annoying if you don't realize that you put conditional formatting and you're like, why does this keep coloring? So yeah, you can do the manual coloring. The only reason this is still yellow is because it doesn't match the criteria. So I showed you filters. You can filter by color, as you see, and it'll show all the colors that are available. One of the other ways to filter your data, which is one of the newer things in Excel, is called slicers. Slicers are like interactive filters. So if you ever worked with a pivot table before, which we'll get to, and I need to keep moving on this, you'll see what happens. So in this list, you can see okay, hold on. keep a little mental note of this. So we converted this into a table. One of the things I was saying was get to know your data. So if you highlight this entire column, press Control-C, you make a copy, pick over here. We're going to hit Control-Alt-V, paste special. Now we're going to do values, so hit V for values. Now there's this little guy down here called transpose. What transpose does is it'll take whatever the orientation of your highlighting is. It can only be one way, so horizontal or vertical, and it will reverse it. So in this case, it's horizontal. If I do transpose, it's going to flip it to vertical. And now you have a list of all the things that, these are all the headers. We just copied all the headers. You can see this is all the headers. So this is a list of all the headers. One of the things I was talking about was about identifying your data and going through it. So I won't go into too much detail, but we'll break this down quickly. So over here, I actually did that. I started with that exact, here, let's do a side-by-side. Alt-W-N. I'm going to scroll back over to where we were. Data 2 is mine, sorry. So this is what we started with, right? So I just called it headers. Press Control-T, made it a table, said yes, my table has headers. Press Enter. And then I started adding in my titles. So if I wanted to recreate this, I can just copy these headers. Click here, Control-Alt-V, V. And now I've just pasted my headers from the other one. So what this table is, and again, this is optional, but I recommend it if you're looking at information you've never seen before, is it lists off all the headers, and then you start to describe what it is. So when I was looking at the data, the very first thing I saw, I was going through, and one second. I have too many windows open. So I noticed that this was actually the fire stations. So I wrote down the description. This header, place code, is fire stations. And then the next one, I noticed when I filtered this, is I saw E and then N and then W, E, N, W. And I realized that was the fire station and the utility. And we can actually make a formula to create this if we wanted to. But I realized, OK, so this is the fire station plus the utility ID, like the type. And so I just went through each of them, looking at what was going on based on the content inside each of these columns, and just put a description of what it is and what I could use it for. So the next one is commodity code, which is the utility type. I saw electricity, gas, and water. I saw the account number, a custom date. I made note, though, that this date isn't recognizable by Excel. And you'll be getting a copy of this file, so you can dig into it more. But if you press Shift F2, well, my comment has run away from me, but if you, OK. So if you want to put a comment, you can press Shift F2. If you like making a new one, you press Shift F2. A quick way, you can type up your comment. Away you go. Press Escape, and you're out. You can also view one. So Shift F2, I can see it. So I made note, this, even though it's a date, it's not recognizable by Excel. I can't, if I click on this dropdown, it doesn't, it sees it as numbers, but it doesn't see it as dates. And the reason I know this is if I go to an actual date, do you see it's grouped it by years? This is another huge feature of tables. It understands the data it's looking at. So this is years. I can actually expand these and see which months are in here. And I can filter again by this too. Just show me 2015. Now it's showing me 2015 for all the different fire stations. And then I can go back and filter some more. But so this is clearly a date. But if I go back to this other tab, the billing period, these are just numbers. They're not, there's no intelligence. I can't go date, month, year. If it's actually a date, it'll be recognized. The other thing too, so I'm going to unfilter this. Clear. Keyboard shortcut. So this is the way the date format looks. One of the ways you can format dates quickly, also a way to test if it's a date, is Control-Shift, the number 3. So it'll show the little hashtag. So if you do Control-Shift-3, now it's converted the dates. If it wasn't a proper date, it wouldn't do that. That's one way to test. There's a few other ways, but OK. So going back to the description. I just went through and I saw that these are the number of days, and this seems to be consumption. And as I reviewed it more, I'm like, the native use is just consumption, is utility consumption. It's not kilowatt hours, because it's also for gas and it's also for water. So anyway, using this is a quick way to reference what your numbers are, what they mean. And then the additional columns I put in was, what's the data type? So if it's text, if it's a date, if it's a number, $sign. So this helps me know what type of formatting I should have on it. And then over here is the data type. So this is a little more technical. I'm not sure if these are all the proper terms, but basically quantitative stuff translates to you can do math with it. And categorical means that it's a way to sort it, or a way to group it or identify different items. And that's why I put an English version here, that it's a meta tag, basically. What is this piece of information? Okay, it's, this is a building. Okay, this is the building name. This is you can't do math with building names, but you can do math with the kilowatt hours or other values. So that's what I did. This, again, not necessary for all your stuff, but if you're working with a large piece of information, this helps you have a map and a legend of what everything is. Okay, one of the things you notice, stuff is yellow here. The reason it's yellow is because when we copied and paste those headers, you notice that we got some blanks in here, and we have like numbers. Tables have to have unique headers. You can't have duplicate names. If I try doing a duplicate name, it's going to say, I know better than you, and fix it. So one of the keyboard shortcuts you can do is Control R. That will copy whatever you have on the left into your cell. So if I press Control R right now, it's going to copy transmission demand, right? But you'll notice something, aside from the fact that it rolled down. What happened to the names? That's right. So it's automatically protecting your data by not having duplicates. So you cannot have repeat names. And that gets into the naming conventions you should have. So this will automatically happen. If I were to do it again and replace this information, it actually puts another 2 on the end here. So I mean, you can keep duplicating, but that's not going to help you. You're just going to end up with a big mess of stuff. So this helps you organize what's in here, but then this can also help you fix the names in your file. So I went through here and I said, okay, no, this really should be called the native use metrics. One second, I'll show you what we're looking at. You can use Control plus arrows to navigate fast to the front end also. So here, so this is the native use, right? This column in yellow had a blank, and that's what yours has right now, right? We click on it, there's nothing here. So the naming pattern I recommend, if this information is related, you put it in as like a base, as your base name, and then anything additional. So for example, you have your utility company name. Then the next part would be the account number. Rather than just calling it account number, you'd say utility name, and then the next column would be utility account number, and then utility becomes your base. So in this instance, native use, this is a number, but then this column is actually related to these numbers. So because we don't want to leave this blank, because that doesn't help anything, it makes it really difficult to access, I'm going to just do Control R. So now I've set the base name to be the exact same, but we'll have a 2. And I'm actually going to just put the word metric, because that's what it is. All the values in here are the metrics, cubes and kilowatt hours. So now when you're searching for it, like when you make your table and when we make pivots, you can quickly find your information and your associated like sequence of how these things go. So so I did the same thing down here, bill demand, and then the next one was blank. So I called it bill demand metric, because that's, again, this happened to be a metric, and they did the same thing for this. So on that topic, if you look at the data itself here, we actually have cubic meters and we have kilowatt hours. So there are actually a couple different metrics in here. So I can't really do anything with cleaning this up. However, this bill demand, I only have kilowatts. So a way you can clean up your data is by putting the name of what metric this is in the header. Now I've just associated what's in here and put the metric right into the title. And you've seen this on charts and stuff, that you'll just put it right in. So I can see there's nothing in here. So if I actually right-click and delete, that's OK in this instance, because these numbers are kilowatts, and that's all they are. If there happen to be other values, you would be doing a big mess. Don't do that. But in this case, we can do that. And in here, too, because there's only kilowatts. So I'm just going to rename this to be kilowatts. And I get rid of the space. And then I can actually get rid of this column. But be aware that when you're deleting columns, like really make sure that you don't need them and you can do this. Like be confident in your changes. This one's the same thing, KVA. Is there any questions?
Yeah.
What's up?
You know, you had a note,
Shift F2.
F2. How
Shift.
do you delete the note?
Right click. So Shift F2. So we create a note. Moat. Moat. And then, yeah, you have to go right click and then go delete comment. One other thing you can do, if you have a bunch of comments and you want to see them all, if you go to review, you can do show all comments. And then all of a sudden, all your comments are popped up. And if you want to get rid of them, you can do, I think you click it again. If you want a comment to stay, you can right click and go show hide, and it'll just stay now. So you can keep a permanent comment up as a quick reference guide.
Sorry, how do you erase it?
Right click, delete comment.